morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on which coast or side of the pond you're on, and welcome to another special edition of Across the Pitch. My name is Phil Kennedy, and today Ross Davenport and I are joined by Iain Evans, who is going to pick the two worst signings for Everton from 2010 through 2020. And we're really excited because not only does he have the two worst signings from 2010 to 2020, he has a pick from 2005 that he believes might be the worst Premier League signing of all time that he's going to tell us about first. So first off, welcome to the show, Iain, and thank you for coming on today and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me on the show. Well, my first game at Goodison Park was in 1983, and that means I've been going to watch Everton for 37 years now. The last 20 years, I've been going home and away with the same seven friends. We're a little band of brothers. I've been a box holder at Everton for 12 years, and both my sons have taken Everton to their heart, even though we now live over in Cheshire. Both my boys turned down the easy opportunities to support Manchester United and Man City and followed their father into supporting Everton. So they've both been mascots for the club that we all love over here, you know. We're a big blue family.
Amazing stuff that it really is a family tradition for you guys with Everton over there. And we just, of course, myself being an Accrington Stanley supporter, Ross being a Bournemouth supporter, we're not glory seekers ourselves. And one thing that we probably should mention is Peter Latham is actually the one who arranged to have you on the show with us today. And he did mention that you have been out to Accrington.
Yeah, I'm a huge Accrington fan. That is my little hidden passion. I've been up there a few times, and Peter's very kindly taken me and sat behind the dugout there. And that's a great family club. And I actually had trials when I was a kid, a teenager up at Accrington, which very few people know about. And it was a real eye-opener to train with professional footballers from a sort of non-professional status to actually see what it means to play professionally. Those guys are doing it for a living, whereas, I was just doing it for fun. And I've got a special place for Accrington in my heart for sure.
That's awesome and great to hear. It's just amazing how everybody that goes to Accrington or has been to Accrington or follows the club even the least little bit, just has that same feeling, family club, and it goes from Andy Holt, the chairman, to Peter with the Supporters Trust. I mean, it's just an amazing group of people over there that you can't say enough about those folks.
Sure, it's the club that refused to die. Accrington Stanley used to be the standing joke of English football. And if you look at how they progressed, and especially with the new development of the stadium, more things like a new scoreboard that most teams take for granted, but they club together, they fundraise as a team, and they've got the new scoreboard there as well. And they're holding their own, I think, this season. I think they're doing a great job.
You said two important things there. The big one was the club that wouldn't die. The other thing was the laughing stock at one point. And like anybody else that isn't from Northern England, I first heard of Accrington Stanley the same way people do with that milk commercial. But then it was when I took the time to go and look at the history and found out about the club that wouldn't die. That's what made me a fan, was that history and just the not just the club, but the town that wouldn't die. I mean, so much history in Accrington. If you go back to the late 1800s, especially with like the brick making, and I've heard that the foundation bricks of the Empire State Building were actually made in Accrington. So I mean, there's just so much history from that town.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible place. It really is. And you're a true football fan when you find yourself in Accrington on a wet sort of Wednesday night in January with the sleet and the snow piling in, and you've got 3,000 hardy souls in there and, banging the drum behind the home end goal. And it's a great place to go and watch a game of football for sure.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's just fantastic stuff. Now, like I said in the introduction, we do have a fantastic story coming up here about a very poor signing that Everton made in 2005. Before we get to that, though, let's have Ross recap who the 10 players that we've added to our worst signings list are so far.
All right, thanks, Phil. So starting off with my beloved AFC Bournemouth, we had Jordan Ibe and Lee Tomlin. For Manchester City, we had Wilfred Boney and Eliaquim Mangala. For Burnley, we had Lucas Chukwueze and Ben Gibson. For Manchester United, Angel Di Maria and Bebe. And for Spurs, Roberto Soldado and Vincent Janssen.
We've seen hundreds of millions of pounds wasted already with the first 5 shows, and are sure to hear about some more soon. But before we started recording, Iain started in on a story of a player who Everton spent £5 million on that only ended up playing 1 match for the club. And it was such an interesting story that I had to interrupt him and say, you know what, we need to get this on record. So, Iain, go ahead and take us through that story that you had started to tell us before the recording.
Sure, Phil. Well, if you ask any Evertonian, there's one name that will always come up, and it's Per Kroldrup, who we signed in the August of 2005 for £5 million. Now, £5 million doesn't sound a lot, but at that time, David Moyes was literally struggling for cash. You know, Bill Kenwright was looking down the back of his settee to get transfer funds, you know. And we made this huge signing of the centre-back. And his first game for the club was away at Villa Park. And I was actually with my friends behind the goal there that Everton were defending. And I had to ask my friend next to me how many beers I'd had because he looked so bad as a footballer. He missed every header. He was playing against John Carew, who absolutely obliterated this guy. And it got to the point where he was ducking out of headers and sort of pulling out of tackles. And everyone was looking at each other going like, this is incredible. How bad is this player? He never played for the club again. Now, after that, I know a couple of Everton players. And Leon Osman tells a great story about in the first training session it would have been Belfield, I think, before they moved to Finch Farm. They had to take Per Kroldrup aside, and David Moyes was throwing a ball up in the air and teaching him how to head a ball. And Leon Osman said it was like, you know, his training his little kid that you're doing, like doing your football. That's how bad this guy was. Great ball player on the floor, but in the Premier League, you know, it was just shocking. So he came for £5 million. He never played for the club again after that game away at Aston Villa, which we lost 4-0. And he returned. But the irony of it was he went back to Italy and had a really good career. It was just, for Everton, it was just so shocking. It was just, you couldn't make it up, you know, it was incredible. And can I just add one other thing as well?
Yes, of course.
I was asked for the 2 worst signings. I actually had a worst ever loan signing, and it just made me laugh that the Man City fans came up with Eliaquim Mangala. He's on my list as worst ever loan signing because he signed for us in January 2018. He only actually managed 40 minutes of a game away at Arsenal in which Everton let in 4 goals, and he was at fault for 3 of them. He got injured and returned to Manchester City.
I remember that one.
It made me laugh. It just made me laugh. It's kind of, how bad is this guy, you know?
Let's go ahead and what we're focusing on with this particular special project that we're doing is 2010 through 2020. And certainly I would imagine that Everton gave you quite a few to choose from over that decade. But what we've been starting with is kind of, we're coming up with 40 total players, and then 32 will make it into the first round proper, if you will. So we're starting off with your guy that we're putting straight to the first round proper, your surefire. Who was the first guy that came to mind when Peter sent you over our question?
It has to be Umar Niasse, who's actually still registered to Everton, believe it or not. We signed him as a panic signing in 2016 in the January transfer window for a fee of $13.5 million from Russia. I don't think Roberto Martinez actually wanted the player at the time, but he was under so much pressure. And in fact, he actually went on to get sacked later that season. But if you look at the role of shame for Niasse, he was signed for $13.5 million. He's got a weekly wage of £55,000 per week on a 5-year deal, which has cost the club £14.3 million. He's had loans at Hull City and Cardiff, neither of which were inspired enough to actually try and sign him. I think it's fair to say that he lacks skill, understanding of the game. He'll run all day, but usually in the wrong direction at the wrong time, hence he ends up offside a lot. And then to add injury to insult on top of all that, he's twice been in trouble with the authorities, one for allegedly getting into his ex-partner's house, and more recently, which is very topical at the moment, he was stopped recently for being out with all the trends in his car during the coronavirus curfew. He just basically sums up everything that's wrong with a professional footballer nowadays, you know. It's a shocker for the club, an absolute shocker.
I don't think that there's going to be many arguments on that. What are your thoughts, Ross?
Yeah, I really just wanted to ask you a sort of broad question about that. In 2016, 2017, you go down the list of just some of the transfers done over those 2 seasons. Just where did it all go wrong with that 2-year period, and why?
Just continual turnover of managers. I mean, we had Martinez, we had Koeman. There's some very strange signings sanctioned by Sam Allardyce. I've got Theo Walcott down here. There's a great story that Cenk Tosun was brought back on our owner's private jet. He went on holiday and came back with a Turkish international centre forward who played in the Champions League, and the manager knew nothing about it. You know, but if you look at, I've got some notes here on some of the players that Everton have wasted millions on. I've got £144.4 million worth of players here. I'll just read these names out quickly. Theo Walcott, 21 million. Alex Iwobi, 27.4 million. Cenk Tosun, 20 million. Yannick Bolasie, 26 million. Gylfi Sigurdsson, 50 million. I mean, £144.4 million there. And I'd say out of all those players, probably only Sigurdsson has contributed. And even that's probably half of what we expected him to do.
Thank goodness for the Lukaku transfer fee coming in. Otherwise, that would have been a big chunk of change lost in just those 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've blown like £500 million on players since we have had a new owner. It was the nicest way of putting it. I remember City did something similar when they signed Robinho and Joe and people like that, trying to buy success and boost themselves up the league. It worked for Man City. It hasn't worked for us. If anything, we've lost our way. And I think we've lost our dignity a little bit as well within the game, in that we've been accused of poaching players, poaching managers. Silva at Watford springs to mind. You know, but listen, it's not all doom and gloom. We've got Richarlison, we've got Lucas Digne, who I think is a fantastic left back. We have made some very, very astute signings, some good signings. But you know, you look at some of the fees that have been paid. I mean, Sigurdsson for one, for me, we started overpaying past 25 million. We paid double that, you know. And I think, you know, it brings me on to my next player. Funnily enough, I think the money ruins players. I don't know where the hunger and the appetite comes from when you're, you know, 6 figures a week wages and you don't have to perform to get them, you know.
Yeah, I think that's where it kind of separates the guys that are playing for the love of the sport, the guys that are playing for the money. And I mean, there's some guys that they get paid and it doesn't matter because they're just out there to win, and you know, money is secondary. But yeah, I mean, it's like any other job. You know, if you make $100 million at it, what's going to motivate you to wake up and want to go to work the next day if you've already got $100 million in the bank? I mean, it's just one of those things. But one guy that you did mention before we get into your second pick that I wanted to kind of talk with you on, because he's somebody that's been a big topic of discussion between myself and one of our other co-hosts, Aaron Ayres. Both Aaron and myself follow Arsenal, and we used to always have a discussion where I thought Iwobi was good and Aaron not so much, and it seems like Everton has kind of proved Aaron to be the winner of that argument. What has your observations of Iwobi been this season when he has played?
Well, I can tell you that I was sat in the Lower Bullen last November-ish time, I think it was. And I can't remember who we were playing, but we lost the game. And Iwobi was so poor, the guy 4 rows in front of me started standing up and screaming, "Iwobi, you're on a football pitch. Iwobi, you've lost your man again." Iwobi, he's left yet again. And he turned round and he realised the man he should be marking had gone 10 yards away. And he got so much abuse off these supporters that he went and played on the other side of the pitch. Now, if you're a professional footballer and you're having to have the fans tell you that you're not marking the man you should be marking, by the way, the kid scored the goal as well, who'd left the go for 10 yards. That speaks volumes of where Iwobi's problems are. He has got some talent. He just sleeps in games. He's not switched on because he's so slow. We had Ross Barkley in midfield. Ross Barkley, for me, was a fantastic footballer, but his brain wasn't sharp enough to just do things at the speed it needs to be done to be a really top player. Ross Barkley is light years ahead of Alex Iwobi in terms of his speed of thought and how he operates on the football pitch. For me, I'm staggered that we paid $27.5 million. I thought it was a joke when I saw it on transfer deadline day. I really did. I've got friends myself who are big Arsenal fans, and Paul Edwards, who's listening in, happy retirement, by the way. He retired on Thursday. But if he's a £20 million plus footballer, then the game's gone. I'm sorry. He's not a good player at all. And for Theo Walcott, there's a classic example of a player who just had it all too early, too soon. He's got just no heart for the game. He'll back out of challenges. He won't go in where it hurts. It's a shame because he used to be electric to watch. I remember watching him playing for England, and he played through the middle for England one game. I think he got a hat-trick against Croatia, I think. But for Everton, his heart's not in it. He's there for the money, and everyone can see that.
All right, well, I think it's a good time to move on to your second, and usually this is the most controversial of the two picks. So who was the second? Was it a tough decision, or was it kind of a 1 and a 1A for you?
No, it was a tough decision because it was going to be Cuco Martina, who we signed from Southampton on a free transfer, and he's just a shocking player. I can't even begin to. He's just got nothing going for him. But however, this is a real heartbreaker. This is Sandro Ramirez is my pick, and Sandro Ramirez we signed under Koeman. I think it was a Steve Walsh signing for Koeman, and Sandro Ramirez tore up the under-23 tournament that summer. We signed him on a 4-year deal in July 2017. From Malaga for a nominal fee, really, of 5.2 million, or it looked nominal at the time. His contract was huge, though. I think he was on like 120 grand a week, 5-year guaranteed. And basically, me and my pals watched him that summer, and every time he got the ball, he looked like he was going to score. He looked like a young Fernando Torres. He just looked amazing. And we couldn't wait for the pre-season to start so we could watch him play in a blue shirt. And the lad just went to pieces. I mean, there's just no other way of saying it. He couldn't shoot. He looked slow. He looked scared in which direction to move. He basically lost all his confidence at the club, effectively lost his motivation with that. And, I had to do some digging around on the internet earlier today just to find out where he is. And he's now at the mighty Valladolid, is it? Valladolid in Spain. Still earning 100 grand plus a week from Everton Football Club. In the 4 years he's been there, he's managed 1 goal in 16 appearances. And to be fair, he nearly even missed that. He only just got it in. So, yeah, unfortunately, bags of potential, huge amounts of optimism when he signed for the club, and a total failure. It's so sad. But there again, exactly what we were saying before, you've got a young player coming in, and all of a sudden, where's the momentum, where's the incentive to go and prove yourself and work hard every day and apply yourself when you've already got a contract that you can retire off, and you haven't done anything in the game to warrant it.
I was going to ask you, and it seems like a lot of the focus these days is on the extraordinary transfer fees, but as you mentioned, the weekly wages can sometimes be more of a problem than any. I think that was definitely the case for Ramirez, and the length of that contract. The management back then, upper level management, obviously, that were dealing with these contracts, are they still in place, the ones that were around in 16, 17? 18?
No, Steve Walsh was sacked by Everton because of his performance in the transfer market. Now, Steve Walsh brought through Vardy at Leicester, the guy that went to the midfielder that went to Chelsea, Kante.
Right.
So Steve Walsh had a sterling track record at Leicester, arrived at Everton. We paid massive compensation to Leicester City to have Steve Walsh at our club, and it was a disaster. You know, it actually upset a lot of Evertonians recently because Steve Walsh came out in the media and said, "Well, I wanted to sign Haaland, and I wasn't backed, and all these players that have since gone on to break through." Well, you know, you can say all those things, but you still brought Sandro, Nias, and all these other players to the club, Martina. You know, it's a shocking real run of signings during that time. Yeah. So you've got to put it down to Steve Walsh. He's had a recruitment, but also the club went through managers like I've never seen in my history as an Evertonian. You know, we gave length of time to managers. Even Martinez got an extended stay at the club when he was under massive pressure. But you know, it's just the way the club went for a few years. Now we've got an absolute world-class manager, and I hope he stays for a very long time, at least till, you know, we're into the new stadium and whatnot.
Yeah, it's one thing, especially with being a Bournemouth fan, having Eddie Howe around so long, is that, you know, that's where the culture of the club starts, you know, is with the manager. And if you could constantly changing managers and styles, just ways to approach the game, it can be good for players, and especially those, you know, potentially looking to come into the club.
I couldn't agree more. And I took my young son, Alfie, down to Bournemouth early this season. We had a great trip down there. What a lovely family club that is. I'm not being patronising to Bournemouth. It's just a great setup, a really friendly place to go and watch a game of football. I was really impressed with what they have down there, you know. You need stability in the club. Look at Liverpool getting the benefits. I hate to say it, but they're getting the benefits of backing Jurgen Klopp, aren't they, over the last few years when he didn't win it. It would have been so easy to get rid of Klopp after 2 years, 3 years. He's had the money. He's not done it. Let's you know, have another go with someone else. You need longevity in the club. You need leadership. You need a direction of where you're going, and everyone has to sort of buy into that. And you've seen the results financially for Everton of what happens if you don't do that, with the mishmash of players that you get around the place who are no longer featuring in the future plans of the club or the new manager, but are still picking up anything from 40,000 to 120,000 plus pounds per week wages. It all has to be covered. I think there was a stat that it was something like £1 million a week of wages being paid by Everton to players on loan at other clubs last year or last season. That's £1 million a week in wages going out of the club that players weren't even going to our training ground. They're at other teams. That's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal amount of money.
Yeah, I think that what I'm hearing here is that Ross, and tell me if you agree with this, that I think we're hearing 2 signings that'll probably break into the first round proper. And with Everton, if Iain had given us a list of 6, we might have 6 Everton signings in the first round proper.
No, I mean, listen, we were just talking today about Spurs. I think alongside Spurs and I think Everton, you could probably perhaps put Man United towards the lower tier behind those two, but I think they've had the sort of, especially in recent years, had the most sort of confounding, you know, especially the high level signings, just where it's all sort of gone wrong with the club, and it's a shame because Everton have got such a great following, and you hope that this is now the beginning of things to turn around.
Yeah, listen, other than, you know, those lot across the park probably going to win the league this year if it ever finishes, which I'm sure it will do at some point. But we've got a lot to be looking forward to. You know, we've got a lot to be excited about. We have a world-class stadium that's going to be ready in 2023-24 season. We have a billionaire owner who it's looking likely, although it's not confirmed yet, that Usmanov's going to come up and join our club and introduce huge amounts of additional funds. We've got a world-class manager. And, you know, we've got the basis of a good side. We've got areas that we need to improve in, for sure. Be careful for what you wish for in this game. You know, I remember Charlton fans being really upset about Alan Kirbysley not playing the football they should be playing. And you look where Charlton are now. Yeah. We've got to be grateful for what we've got. And the future's bright. There's a lot going our way. And, yeah, it's all right. It's going to take a little bit of time, but as we all know at the moment, we've all got a lot of time, so it's a good thing.
Very true.
Yeah, I definitely think from what I've seen this year, and certainly with the change of manager, that Everton is now a club that it is headed in the right direction, or I hope so at least. And, you know, one thing that really hit me that you talked about earlier is that Everton kind of seems to have lost their way in terms of chasing all these players, because it was always a club known for developing talent. And I just think of all of the players that John Coleman has gotten out of the Everton Academy over the years, that I'd like to see Everton really get back to that, focusing on their academy and building out from there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We have a fantastic young talent in the name of Anthony Gordon coming through. He's made, I think, 1.5 appearances for the first team this season. He's not the finished article by any stretch of the imagination, but he's getting rave reviews all around Europe at the moment, which I think has got to be a positive. But yeah, the next Wayne Rooney's been a long time coming, hasn't it? There's nothing more exciting for any football team, I'd say, than seeing a local lad come through, burst onto the scene, and be a real asset to the side. I remember Michael Ball coming through in defence, centre back, local Evertonian, great sort of supporter of the club, and he sits not far from me now on match days. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying in terms of bringing players through. Maybe the way the football is going to have to adapt with all the financial crisis is going to come out of where we currently are. Maybe it's going to make them look a little bit more developing and getting players through rather than relying on these big money signings, because if you're paying that sort of money to bring players in and you're backing them financially, it's hard to move them on. If you're on 120 grand a week and someone doesn't want to pay you 120 grand a week, you're not going to go anywhere, and you're going to stink the place out, aren't you, in the training ground, because you're not playing and all the other lads are putting in the hard work. If you look at an example, a good friend of mine's son plays for West Ham, a lad called Declan Rice. Declan was left Chelsea. He got let go by Chelsea. He's going to go back there, we think, this summer. And if you look at Declan, he went to West Ham. He could have gone to 2 or 3 other clubs in London. But he was so humble. His wages were fairly low. His apprenticeship wages. He kept his feet on the ground and he worked his way up. He had the ambition and drive to work his way up. And he'll reap the benefits for that now. And that surely has to be the model going forward for academy players. Don't give them the big money. I remember going down to see him when he played for West Ham a couple of seasons ago, and his dad showed me the players' car park, and Declan had the most modest car in there. He sometimes gets to train home with his dad. It's unbelievable after a match. But having that modesty, have that financial incentive when they've actually achieved something. Do you know what I mean? Like getting in the first team, get so many caps from the first team under your belt, rather than just saying, like we did with Sandro Ramirez, there's a contract for life. I hope you do well.
I think ultimately one of the biggest problems with football is that because there's not a super league per se, that there's no way of really putting limitations on what the other leagues around the world do with like Ross would be familiar with in Major League Baseball, there's an arbitration system, but it's not like a Japanese league team is going to come and try to pay more than a Major League Baseball team, where in England, if the Premier League clubs aren't putting out these big money salaries, then Spain or Germany or Italy comes and signs the players. There ultimately needs to be something where all of the leagues come together and agree on something, similar to like an arbitration system like Major League Baseball uses over here.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think you've got the commercial values, haven't you? And the big clubs are always going to have the more money to do that sort of stuff, and they're not going to want to let other clubs come to that party, are they? I mean, you can see what UEFA are trying to do in Manchester City at the moment in terms of financial fair play. It's a great idea. It's a lovely idea, but the reality of it is, football will always be dominated by money, unfortunately, and it's a sad state of affairs. I think it's actually turned a lot of people off in terms of football. I think it's lost its way a little bit in that players, they're not the players that, they're not the characters that you used to see, in the game in the 80s and dare I even say early 90s. You've got, superstars now that, it's all on Instagram and likability and whatever. It's sad that it's changed for that matter, but I don't honestly have an answer as to how you go about levelling the playing field and keeping players hungry as youngsters when, market forces will dictate that their agents will take them to the club that will give them the biggest and most lucrative contract.
Blame the agents, because that's where a lot of it starts.
I used to work for a sports agent. I've got to be careful.
One thing I was going to say is that I think that's why personally I get more enjoyment out of watching Accrington Stanley or Phoenix Rising than I do out of watching the Premier League. Even if the skill level isn't there, I know if a guy is playing for Accrington Stanley or Phoenix Rising, they're playing for the love of the game because they're certainly not getting rich off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a local club to us called Stockport County.
Yeah.
And, so my son goes to it doesn't really matter, but I take my sons down to Stockport County's ground when they're playing on like a day when Everton aren't playing. And they love it down there. It's such a fun, it's great. They can get close to the pitch. The players can sort of interact with the kids a little bit more. And like you say, you've got honesty in the game in that they're all playing not for megabucks. They're playing because they're trying to get on in the game. They're trying to improve themselves, get to a higher league or whatever. But they have to put everything they've got in there, And I totally agree with what you're saying. It's not all right. The standard's not there, but in terms of integrity and desire, you can't beat it. I really enjoy it. I love going down to Stockport County.
Absolutely, and I think Ross, you commentate on the what's the third division here, which is USL League One, and you definitely see that part and integrity that Iain's talking about at that level.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think there's room in every country for all levels of professional soccer. It's just starting really to creep in here now with the addition of the USL League One and League Two and NISA and things like that, where investors are seeing that there's a market for the lower division soccer that people, especially in the size of this country where people can't get always to MLS teams, there is a hunger for that lower level football, and it's great to see how it's growing here in the US.
Yeah, I mean, here in Phoenix, even at a city our size, we have all the professional sports, baseball, American football, basketball, hockey, and the passion at the Phoenix Rising, which is a second division team here, is far outweighs what you would see at any of those major league professional sports with $1 million players and things like that. I mean, there's just nothing that beats that grassroots football atmosphere.
Oh yeah, listen, at the top levels, the prices that they're charging for tickets, it's just becoming inaccessible for a lot of regular people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
For their families especially.
I think that's a great point you make there about the cost of taking, your family to a football match. I'm trying to think what tickets are $55. I took my kids to the Everton Man United game recently. I think for just tickets, forget about travel, food, all the rest of it. I think we paid about £120, and I think Everton's one of the more reasonably priced grounds. The research is correct in the UK. So it's not a family spectator sport anymore unless you're fairly well paid and remunerated. The cost of taking a family of four to a game week in, week out, even with season tickets, you must be looking at nearly, $2,500 a year for 4 season tickets, 2 out of 2 kids at some of these grounds. It's a lot of money. But before you fork out for replica kits and everything else that goes with it, it's not the working man's game it once was. I'm starting to sound like my dad here. I'm starting to sound like that old man. Good old days.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the way that entertainment in general is gone. I mean, you could sit here and talk about what movie stars are paid and why it's $20 for popcorn when you go to the movies these days.
Oh, I just wanted to get some of Iain's other honourable mentions. I know there's could go on for a while with.
Yeah, let's do that.
But maybe 2 or 3 other ones that could have made the list.
Okay, we signed a player called Antolin Alcaraz from Wigan when Roberto Martinez came over, and he marked his debut with an absolute bullet of a header, unfortunately into the back of his own net, and it never really got much better for poor old Alcaraz. We used to have a joke that anyone could escape from Alcaraz. Yeah, he was an absolute shocker. I asked my children earlier as to who would be their worst signings, and my eldest lad Freddie said Theo Walcott. He's not a huge fan of Theo. And my youngest said Alex Iwobi. So I think we've touched on them already.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking at loss in terms of revenue, Yannick Bolasie at 26 million, and I feel sorry for him because I don't think he knew what he was going to do next with the football, So if you're trying to tackle him or mark him, he's got no chance. But Yannick was very unlucky. He was starting to come into a little bit of form for Everton, and then he played a game against Manchester City where he did his, I think it was ACL ligaments, and stupidly Everton let him play on for another 2 or 3 minutes, and he absolutely ruined his knee. And it was, you got to look at the medical staff at Everton for not getting him off the pitch straight away for that one. But yeah, in terms of a loss of revenue, I'd say Yannick Bolasie is right up there as well. There's been other players as well. I think Schneiderlin offered a great deal in his first season when we signed him from Manchester United for 25 million, and then just had a total lack of confidence, crisis, whatever you want to call it. But Schneiderlin's a player that's just for the last 3 seasons has been playing to get out of the club, And it's such a shame because when he first came, as I said, for the first sort of season, I thought he was fantastic. Really good player.
Yeah, sometimes you have to wonder with the medical staff why they don't get players off the pitch quicker than they do, because it's certainly something where you just see too often where a guy goes back out there and ends up getting injured worse because they were out there where they shouldn't have been.
Oh, absolutely. I remember watching that incident. I didn't actually get to the game that night. I watched it at home with my children on Sky. And I remember watching his knee go slightly the wrong way at the time. And when he showed it back on the replay, and I couldn't believe that the medical staff didn't take him off the pitch. And then I thought, well, maybe I've got it wrong. I'm no medical professional. I'm no expert. And then literally a couple of minutes later, he just sat down, and that was the end of his Everton career. He's been out on loan ever since. By the way, it's not all doom and gloom at Everton. We have got rid of some belters, by the way. Yeah, if you look at the fact that we got 15 million for Jack Rodwell to Manchester City. And all you have to do is watch the Sunderland documentary, and that'll tell you everything you need to know about Jack Rodwell.
Yeah, we actually had Jack Rodwell come up earlier, but he ended up only being an honorable mention for Man City. So that'll tell you how bad some of their picks may have been. And that's the thing, is it seems that no matter how good or how bad a team's been over the past 10 years, everybody seems to have some bad signings. But we really appreciate you coming on with us here today, and this has been just some fantastic stuff. And was there anything that either one of you wanted to add on before we wrap up for today?
Well, if you wouldn't mind, my dad, who obviously introduced me to Everton, is in isolation at the moment. So I just love to wish my dad, Bob Evans, all the very best, and stay safe, Dad. And we're all thinking of you.
Absolutely, that's the most important thing right now, is that everybody could just be safe, be healthy, stay inside, protect yourself, and protect those that you love and those around you. And the more that people do the right thing, the sooner we'll be back to football and everything else that we love on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Ross, did you have anything else?
No, that's it. Great work there for me, and great insight on some of these Everton signings. He said he could have gone on forever, but no, great look at some of the two of the worst, we'll say.
Yeah, absolutely. We've really this has been one of the best ones of these we've done so far, and I will send you an email and let you know as soon as we have it live.
That's brilliant. Listen, I really appreciate your time this evening, guys. Stay safe, stay well, okay?
Yeah, cheers, boys.
Cheers.
All the best. Bye-bye now.